All right, hello and welcome everyone. Apologies, we're a minute late. We're experiencing some technical challenges, but stay tuned, the webinar will commence shortly. We have a very unique and interesting session ahead of us today with an industry that's not so well known, the shipbuilding industry. And we'll hear from three speakers today about the environment of this industry, the skills needed, and also some practical examples from the practitioner perspective. So sit back and we will get underway very shortly. In the meantime, please use the chat box, tell us where you're dialing in from, and say hi to your fellow colleagues. We will commence very shortly. I hope you can hear me loud and clear. If not, just pop a message in the chat box. Okay, in the interest of time, hello Ian. In the interest of time, let's get started. I hope you can all see the screen. As the title say, an opportunity for procurement supply profession, a world of opportunity, I should say, in the shipbuilding industry. This is the topic of today's session. Welcome everyone. My name is Giovanni Ferrante. I'm the marketing manager of CIPS in the ANZ region, and it's my pleasure to be your host for today's session. I'll keep my introduction very brief, not to steal any seconds from the amazing speakers we have for today. Before we get started, a few housekeeping issues, just letting everyone know that this webinar is being recorded and a link to the recording will be made available in the next couple of days. I would also like to acknowledge the traditional owner of the land from where I'm dialing in from today, and that's the land of the Wurundjeri, Wurrung and Burunong peoples of the Kulin Nation. And I'd like to pay my respect to the elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people on the call today. I'd also like to extend a warm welcome to our colleagues in New Zealand and Tina koto, Tina koto, Tina koto katoa. We have over 70 people registered with us today, and I hope it will be a very engaging discussion. So, as mentioned, Naval Shipbuilding College, which is the organization that has kindly collaborated with CIPS to run this webinar, and CIPS will unravel the world and wealth of opportunity in the naval shipbuilding industry, an industry in which the government has made a substantial investment, financial and in terms of skills prospects, to set the sector up for the future. Something like $183 billion coming into the pipeline for the next 15 years, and 15,000 plus jobs will be made available. A lot of those jobs will be in procurement and supply chain management, so stay tuned. We have three speakers, as mentioned before today. Matt Critchley, the head of platform and major subcontracts at BAE Systems Maritime Australia. James Dunlop, talent acquisition team lead at the Naval Shipbuilding College, and Charlotte Payne, our very own Charlotte Payne, head of professional body at CIPS here in ANZ. Now, without any further ado, I'd like to first thank you profoundly, Matt, for joining us today. And I will hand over to you, Matt, and you can share your practitioner perspective on such an exciting industry. So thank you very much for joining us, Matt, and over to you.
Thank you, Giovanni, and welcome everyone. I'd like to thank CIPS and the NSC for inviting me to come and speak for a short while today, and looking forward to discussion later. So I'm just going to go through a bit of a background to my career, again, how I've utilised CIPS, and some of the opportunities in defence and in Maritime, or BAE Maritime Australia. So I'll lead into my slides. So who am I? How long have I been in defence? So I've been in defence now for 14 years. I come from the UK. I attended Lancaster University. If you could just go back one, if that's okay. So I attended Lancaster University and I studied operation management, and then did a master's in operational research. I'll be honest, at that point, I didn't really understand what procurement and supply chain was, but as I joined the graduate programme, they talked over some of the potential opportunities and it sounded interesting. So 14 years on, I still think it's interesting. It's led me to migrate from the UK over to Australia to get a different view and work on a different class. So I started with BAE Systems Maritime submarines. I come from Cumbria. Barrow is one of the areas in the UK who actually produces the nuclear submarines. And that experience has then led me onto Hunter. I started off working for a small consultancy firm, utilising some of my degree and masters, doing crowd modelling. And again, that didn't probably naturally lead on to procurement, but I think that analytics, that understanding really helps, especially when assessing some of the tenders, understanding programs, schedules, utilising PM skills, risk and opportunity. So I really thought that actually gave me, without realising, quite a good grounding to go into procurement. Okay, so if you could move on one, please. So what I probably didn't mention there is I started studying for CIPS, so my graduate diploma in purchasing supply. I did level 4 after about 3 years within BAE Systems, and I did level 4 and 5, 6 in the UK over about a 3 to 4 year period. So what does a major subcontract platform team do? So what does my team do at BAE? So we manage the large, high value, high risk contracts for the Hunter programme. What we mean by platform is the actual ship itself. So we really divide the team into platform and combat systems, the combat being radar, sonar, weapon systems, etc., and the platform being the ship. So our team is growing massively, or my team is growing massively. At the start of this year, we had about 3 dedicated individuals. By the end of the year, we're going to have 30 within the team alone. And that is reflected across the wider business in the other category teams, the transactional, indirect, on-site support and services, and the combat system team. My team personally, we look after dozens of procurement packages, engaging with both a local and global supply chain, a variety of equipment. So the wider supply chain has over 80 individuals. Our team has 64 packages, 42 suppliers over 4 continents. Our key interfaces we have is into planning, project management, project controls, engineering, logistics, to name a few. And again, some of the skill sets I really look for within my team are some knowledge of commercial contracting, being able to understand a schedule, risk management, risk and opportunity management, able to understand estimates, budgets, etc. So it is a wide skill set we really utilise. If you could move on, please, Giovanni. Okay, so who is BAE Systems Maritime Australia? So we're a subsidiary of BAE Systems Australia. We are the prime contractor on the Hunter class frigate. So again, we work with a number of other major defence companies on this and a number of local industries, but we act as the prime. We have more than 1,300 employees on Hunter. This number is rapidly growing. For example, my team is a good example I've just mentioned of that, where we've gone from 2 to 3 individuals going up to 30 within a year. We also continue to support the OPV, so offshore patrol vessel, and the air warfare destroyer programs. We have been within defence in Australia, supporting the Australian Defence Force for the last 65 years. And the name NSC Shipbuilding, which you'll also see here mentioned, is the legal trading name of BAE Maritime Australia. So if you could move on, Giovanni. again. And yeah, I should have mentioned any questions, please put them in the chat and we'll have a discussion at the Q&A at the end. Again, the actual shipyard itself, so we produced the Hunter class frigate in Osborne, that's South Australia, within Adelaide. So there's been a lot of investment in the site recently, well, over the last 5 years. So the Australian government has put a large investment in the facilities. It's a very modern shipyard, especially compared to where I'm from the UK. The investment put in defence by the Australian government is quite remarkable, really. So we've had a new build hall, paint, shot blast, block assembly, steel fabrications. So we actually lease the facility. BAE Systems leases the facility from the Australian Naval Infrastructure. So it is actually still a government-controlled site. It is just leased by BAE. So effectively, the whole point and design of the shipyard is a clear flow of material, steel in, activities occurring, gradual assembly into units, into blocks, paint, outfit, out to the docks, tested, and then shipped and delivered. If you could just move on one, please. Okay, so where are we currently? So we have started, and well, we're actually fairly into now the prototyping phase. We commenced basically 10 months ago, December 20. We've signed a number of contracts with local businesses for provision of services, steel, piping. So we're not only testing the manufacturing processes at the site, we're testing quality assurance processes, procurement systems, and a variety of processes that we use across the whole shipyard. So we've getting some real valuable lessons learned from this, which is allowing us to amend some of the ways we're going to work, some of the systems, how we actually interface cross-functionally. So it's really useful doing this prototype, not only to demonstrate to the customer, the Commonwealth of Australia, the ability and to meet some of the requirements, the standards which have been flown down, but really testing and proving our processes and systems can cope with this. To support this, we're also undertaking research and development. We've got an R&D team who are looking at things like improvement to process, revised material to make the ship lightweight, and areas such as that, which we'll feed in. And gradually, as part of this, we've been investing heavily as well in capability upskilling and training of a number of individuals. If you could move on, please, Giovanni. So the prototyping is a 4-year activity. We're using Australian steel. So I think this has been in the news fairly recently and up to a year ago. So where possible, in most cases, we are sourcing local supplies. We're looking at, as I said, the end-to-end, and it is really a de-risking. And it provides the operational basis, the durations, etc., to put a more credible future plan together. Okay, if we could move on. So where the supply place is, we are asking and we're encouraging individual companies. So we do at trade events, we're encouraging people to sign up to ICN. So the Australian capability within that, within the ICN, companies can register their interest, and when we're putting local tenders out, we're putting them on the ICN for people to then put expressions of interest. And when we're issuing these out, we're doing a small down selection and issuing them to the companies who have put their interest for these different packages. So within that tool set, we put a small summary of what the scope is, scope of work, the duration and the information to allow companies to assess what it is, and if they feel it's something they'd be capable of bidding for, we then use this platform to elicit expressions of interest and begin that engagement process. So there, I won't read through them, but we've already placed a number of contracts via this route. And again, this is from cabling, infrastructure, steel, etc. So we're really trying to utilise this platform as much as we can. So as part of the growth, we've only really just started this project. It will be going on for a number of years. These are long defence programmes with really long build, test and delivery phases. It's a 9-ship programme, or the intention is there's going to be 9 ships. As part of that, we really want to be bringing along a credible pipeline of talent. So we're investing a lot in early careers, graduates, summer interns, trainees, apprenticeships. So if you are interested, or if there are wider interest in here, we do have a link there about the early careers and the potential future careers. Again, longer term, the Hunter programme will look to sustain over 5,000 jobs directly in BE and the wider supply chain throughout the programme. So this will bring a lot of jobs, not only to South Australia, but the whole of Australia. And we want to make sure of this, there is a good opportunities for any individuals who want to have a career in defence. So although this is talking about a career pathway for graduates, also on there is careers within the Hunter programme. So that leads me on to the next slide. So over the next 30 years, we'll have multiple opportunities. BE System Maritime Australia is also looking at a number of additional programmes. So the air warfare destroyer, there is refit work, there is future defence work, which is coming. So we are really looking and investing in the capability. There is a consistent now influx of demand. So we are really bringing in and growing the team over the next 2 to 3 years. We will see significant growth, and there'll be significant opportunities within defence on the Hunter programme. As well, we believe this will likely create a number of job opportunities within the supply base. As we start letting these contracts, there will be a greater demand on resource and skill sets throughout each of our sub-tier suppliers, which will likely in turn create additional quality jobs throughout Australia. Yeah. And that's everything. If there are any questions, please just put them in the Q&A, and again, we'll have a discussion later. Thank you.
Thanks, Matthew, for the presentation. Charlotte, we'll hand over to you now.
Perfect, thank you. Hi everybody, good morning, good afternoon. My name is Charlotte Payne. I head up the professional body for CIPS. I'm speaking to you today from Melbourne, Australia, and I'm delighted to see so many of you here today, and it's a real privilege to hear from Matt a little bit about his career journey and also importantly the prospects for the shipbuilding industry across Australia and what's coming up. So hopefully you'll have got a little bit of a flavour for some pretty exciting opportunities that will be coming up, and James will join us shortly to talk about that a little bit more. What I'd like to reflect on a little bit is some of the broader skills and capabilities that are of use to individuals to reflect on if they're considering their career development opportunities, equally professional development. Matt certainly touched upon a lot, and I know James will cover off a few more, but it's very clear to me that as a procurement professional, irrespective of which sector, which industry you're working in, there's such a broad variety of skills that you can develop and of course deploy and use to your own benefit from a career perspective, but most importantly to achieve the outcomes for your stakeholders. Obviously your employer, your organization, but equally your internal stakeholders, so your internal clients, and more broadly your customer base, be that public sector, in public value, or in the case of the private sector, potentially shareholders and so on. So Matt certainly touched on a lot of those skills, and I know James will cover off a few more shortly. Maybe to help us reflect on those skills, I'd just like to break those down into maybe 3 broad categories. So really one of those categories would be the sector specific skills. So looking at the defence sector is one, but equally, shipbuilding is a sector within that sector and an area of specialism. So there'll be some skill sets that are unique to that sector, and perhaps we'll reflect on those in a moment and consider where can we get those skills from, how can we grow and develop those skills. And I think it's fair to say, in common with many skills, those will constantly be evolving throughout your lifetime and your career. Then there's the technical skill set. So those that are technical and particular to procurement and supply management. Equally, those kind of technical skills, analytical, that Matt mentioned, which are absolutely deployed in a wide variety of sectors, but are particularly useful in a procurement and supply environment. So we'll perhaps reflect on some of those and how you can actually go about developing those skills, refreshing those skill set throughout your career to make sure that you're current, you're up to date and equipped with the right skill set to achieve the right outcomes. And the final category of skills to perhaps reflect on are those soft skills. So the things that often you can be taught the theory, but actually it's not until you start to practice those skills that you really start to develop them, often on a trial and error basis. I think we've all been there, myself included, to really start to hone and develop some of those soft skills, be they the interpersonal skills, the influencing skills, and so on. What we do know, and a lot of this information is drawn from the annual Procurement Salary Insights survey that we conduct in partnership with Hays. There's a copy on our website if you'd like to read that at your leisure. We know that employers consistently in Australia, in New Zealand, and more broadly, they consistently tell us that they struggle to recruit and attract the right skills to deliver what they foresee, both for the now, but also in the future for their organizations. So us kind of reflecting on our personal accountability to be the very best professionals that we can, it's really helpful to think about the skills that we might need to develop. One, to stay current where we are at the moment, but equally, how can we fast track the development of some of those skills so that we can actually be in a really good position to take advantage of the opportunities that Matt's described, that James will talk us through shortly in that naval shipbuilding sector. So let's take as a first example some of those sector specific skills. Now, I think the most obvious place to develop those skills will actually be in the workplace. So thinking about when you're fairly new into a role, you'll often go through company inductions and so on and so forth, to help you understand, the stakeholders, relevant policies, procedures, both at a company level, but also more at a functional level from a procurement and supply perspective. You'll have heard Matt explain how shipbuilding is obviously part of the defence sector. The defence sector in Australia then has its ASDEFCON, which is a standard set of kind of contracting and tendering templates that would apply. And those are very sector specific information that you would need to factor in as part of your day-to-day procurement activities. You potentially wouldn't have those as DEFCON, for example, that context to factor in if you were working in a different sector. So if you think about the retail sector, clearly a different set of contexts would apply. So those sector specific or more company specific skills are very much the context in which you will conduct your procurement and supply chain activities, and they will be continually developed. often the context in which you conduct your activities will change. Things will happen in the external environment that may well impact on the way in which your company operates, the way in which your sector operates. Changes in legislation will affect, and so on and so forth. So definitely looking within your company for that support to develop those skills is really good. Equally, recognizing some of you will be looking to get into the sector. So you might want to conduct some desk-based research around the sorts of things that would apply in that sector. And also the Naval Shipbuilding College would certainly have a resource base to support you there, which James will talk to in a moment. Number 2, that technical skill set, that procurement and supply heartland that we as professionals aspire to develop, and once we are fully fledged, we will constantly draw upon to support our organisation and deliver value for our stakeholders. Be that working with your internal stakeholders and external stakeholders to really identify and specify the requirements. So there's a skill in gathering those requirements, but the real skill is actually interpreting those requirements. You would also draw upon some of your sector-specific skills to interpret those requirements. But those technical skill set with your sector skill set will combine to make sure you are equipped with the skills to deliver the value outcomes required and really specify the requirements appropriately so that you're in a good position to engage with the market, understand what's on offer, and then conduct a strategic sourcing exercise as appropriate to achieve the right outcome. So the technical skill set is often something, it can be learnt on the job, but often that's quite dangerous. There can be a lot of trial and error, and there are no second chances, particularly in a sector like defence, where actually you're scrutinised by your stakeholders, in particular the public. The best way in our experience would be to develop those technical skills through a form of training and qualifications and working your way through a curriculum so that you can build those technical skill sets, which will really form the spine of your repertoire of skills, your toolkit, if you like. Those skills will apply irrespective of which sector you operate in, dovetailed into reflecting the sector-specific skills. That's when you really start to kind of adapt and pivot to a change in circumstances or sectors. So this is where we would recommend you consider the CIPS offer and how that can support you to develop your capability. And we'd strongly encourage you to get in touch. If you're thinking about getting qualified, equally if you're part qualified, please do get in touch and find out how we can support you to develop your skill set through a suite of qualifications or certified training. Matt described, he touched upon his journey through the professional qualifications before he came to Australia in the UK. So the third category of skills is really those soft skills. Again, these are constantly evolving and being fine-tuned, and they're very much something that will develop throughout your career. And part of that is about getting confidence to get exposure to different situations and reflecting on your learning. That went quite well, but what is it that I could potentially do a little bit differently so that I can get a better outcome or less painfully next time? How could I actually ensure that I engage the right stakeholders in the most appropriate way and influence them in the right way to get the outcome for the organization? So the soft skills is very much a third and very important component of those three skills. And again, I would say it's harder to teach and learn those. The better you get to know yourself, the easier it is to develop and hone those skills. Your technical skills can absolutely be taught and developed relatively quickly, and then accompanied by the sector-specific skills will really help you operate effectively in, hopefully, the naval shipbuilding environment. So that's just some reflections on some of the skills. Please don't hesitate to reach out. As I've said, ask your questions. Matt, James and I will remain on for a panel question and answer session after I've handed over to James. Now, without much further ado, I shall invite James to join me. Thank you, James.
Thanks, Charlotte, and thanks, Matt and Gio as well. had a few technical difficulties, but managed to get on. But I'd just like to say welcome everyone and thanks for attending this webinar. Before I begin, just like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land throughout Australia and pay respects to the elders past, present and future. So my name's James. I'm part of the talent acquisition team here at the Naval Shipbuilding College. Today we'll take some time just to find out a bit more about the career opportunities that exist in Australia's naval shipbuilding industry. And we'll also have some time at the end for questions, as Charlotte mentioned, if you have anything more that you want to talk about. A little bit more about myself. So I've been here at the college just over 3 years now in the talent acquisition team. I'll also give you a bit more of a rundown around the different pillars within the NSC as well. So just to give you a bit of insight around the Naval Shipbuilding College. So the NSC's an unprecedented approach to the workforce planning and skilling to ensure the naval shipbuilding enterprise has skilled Australian workforce to build and maintain a Royal Australian Navy submarines and ships. It's a crucial Australian government initiative that will support the naval shipbuilding industry and the supply chain as well to identify, skill and retain the workforce in decades to come as well. So there are a few different key aspects on this slide that I'll just run through for everyone. So we have the government facing, so it's the purpose, the discharge of policy and the workforce populations and skills feedback. We have industry facing, which we work really closely with the shipbuilding companies to understand what jobs they'll need to build down the track when it's required to. Academia facing, so we have established a training and education provider network in every state and territory across Australia and are endorsing courses at TAFE and university partners to ensure graduates or apprentices lead with the skills required by industry and contribute to a sustainable pipeline of skilled workers moving forward. In SA, we work with 3 universities, so TAFE SA and also Flinders Adelaide and University in South Australia, and can provide referrals through the students in our endorsed courses too. And just lastly on this slide, so the workforce facing, so the job opportunities, information, career paths and the workforce of tomorrow. So we're actually a free service to help job seekers and students plan pathways into the industry and then connect them with jobs when they're qualified as well. Okay, so just jumping onto that next slide. And so this is just a bit more of an NSC overview. So I'm just going to change it up a little bit and work from back to front on this one. So our ultimate goal is to get candidates employed within the naval shipbuilding industry or enterprise. So when a candidate is employment ready, this means they have the relevant skill sets or knowledge, and we can connect them with employment opportunities across the enterprise via our jobs portal with the NSC. The education and talent acquisition teams work hand in hand. So TI identify and support candidates for alignment with roles within the industry. And the education component is where we work with a range of different education providers across Australia that are aligned to the types of roles that we are requiring and training courses specific to the industry too. Stepping back into the communications component. So our communications team promote shipbuilding careers and feed through potential candidates into our workforce register. We normally look at having those tailored conversations and also about industry to the candidates too. And lastly, but firstly, so the workforce planning team, so they work with industry to identify standardised roles, look at the competencies for those roles and also the recruitment forecast on an enterprise level that is coming up with these projects too. And the next slide. So this slide gives a bit of an overview around the different types of projects that are occurring or coming up within the naval shipbuilding industry. So essentially we're building a few different types of ships over the next 30 years in Australia. So we have the Hunter class frigates, so they're being built here in South Australia by BAE. So 9 of those vessels will be built. Just give you a bit more insight into that. So these are submarine hunting surface ships. It'll be different. And so they're designed to be super quiet and stay invisible to threats and have advanced sonar and radar systems to detect different types of threats coming through. We have the 12 Arafura class offshore patrol vessels that are being built over in WA as well. There's the 21 Pacific patrol boats being built in WA, and then also 6 K-class patrol boats being built in WA too. So you can see it's predominantly SA and WA. We're also looking at what's called sustainment, so which happens around the country. If you think of it as a car that has to be maintained and upkept and types of concept of that, so it's the same as a submarine and a vessel as well. And so they will need to be maintained and have those services and upgrade on that regular basis, just to keep an eye on them and make sure everything's working there. And so the next slide, so one of the key things about the shipbuilding industry is it's a really big investment for the Commonwealth Government of Australia, and it's a long-term work as well. So we're looking at the committing to $180 billion over the next 30 years, and that's going to result in 15,000 jobs nationally and positions required. So here you can see a bit of a scale of the Hunter-class frigates and how they compare with the size of other objects. So it compares just a little bit bigger than that football oval in the size. So lots of infrastructure has to go into place and then go in and do the builds of these vessels as well. And a bit more around the types of roles that we'll be looking for. So within the supply chain, so there's a few different types of roles and job families that we look at. So across them, there's 5 job families in total that the NSC has identified within the industry. So job families being engineering, trades and operations, supply chain, support, and also project management. So roles within this will include project roles, quality, integrated logistics support, purchasing, engineering, trades, apprentices, administration, finance, marketing, and the list goes on there. There's about 300 different types of roles that we've identified required within the industry. In terms of location, so the new builds and the sustainable will occur SAWA, which is where most of the roles will be located. However, having said that, we're currently seeing and will continue to see the roles advertised across most states and territories to support the ongoing sustainment of current naval fleets and vessels as well. Another component just to be mindful of, so you can think of it as like, I've never been within the naval shipbuilding industry. How do I get in? How do I get that recognition? So another component that the NSC assists with is just around transitioning industry. So candidates that haven't necessarily been within the industry before or coming from across adjacent industries such as like mining, oil and gas, and a few others too. So we do have the shipbuilding taster, which is available on our website for free. It's a shorter course just to run through, give a bit of insight. If anyone wants to jump on, they're more than welcome to do that. The extended version is the Introduction to Naval Shipbuilding. So that's currently available through TAFE SA. So we work in collaboration with industry, TAFE, and also here at the NSC to develop that, a little bit longer in that concept. And then we also do have bridging and specialist courses. So if you think of bridging more as a course that you've got some form of relevant qualification with the industry, but you just need that little bit of extra knowledge and understanding around what happens within the naval shipbuilding enterprise, that's the type that you'd be looking at there. And specialist courses are more aimed at ILS or niche areas within particular roles or skill sets as well. So a bit of a breakdown on that one for you. And just on the next slide. So how can we help you? So you're more than welcome to jump on our website at navalshipbuildingcollege.com.au and select the yellow button that says join the workforce register. So by joining the workforce register, you'll be invited to a telephone career conversation with one of our members of my team. We can help identify suitable opportunities for you and any training and upskilling that would be beneficial depending on what your career pathway or aim is as well, and what's available currently across industry. So it's a free and confidential career conversation that will create those pathways to your future career in shipbuilding. We can also provide advice on training pathways. So with the power of our course catalogue, a collation of qualifications and bridging courses delivered across Australia and relevant to shipbuilding, we can recommend high school subjects, higher education, so vet and tertiary, to develop skills, obtain qualifications and create that career path options to meet demands of the Australian Naval Shipbuilding enterprise. So with the course catalogue, so it assists job seekers to access the career paths and actions, provides industry partners with the access to skilling and upskilling of their workforce too, and showcases the shipbuilding industry qualifications through training providers across Australia. And lastly, just provides Commonwealth and state and territory governments with access to relevant shipbuilding and training in one central location. And just to give a bit more oversight on the jobs portal as well. So within the Workforce Register, we do have another component that candidates do get access to as well. So we're making it even easier to search for jobs online and connect candidates with employers too. So the new jobs portal will give you a unique login and access to your profile, access to roles posted by our industry partners. So as Matt was talking before, BAE is one of our industry partners and do post roles within the shipbuilding enterprise on there too. You can apply for different roles posted on by the industry partners too. And our industry partners are also able to search for candidates via the jobs portal for certain types of roles and skill sets. You candidate contact details if the consent has been gained, and they can contact you directly for those different opportunities in the future as well. Right. So this one's just a bit more of an overview of the different types of processes going through and what to expect from your registration and your application with us. Sorry, Charlotte, I think the PowerPoint just disappeared. Good, I'll just talk you through anyway. So what to expect on this one. So when you do register, we'll invite you to one of those career conversations, and that's where we'll have that private and confidential chat and then process through. So whether we look at further recommendations or anything like that as well. Here's the visual for everyone now. And then that's that career planning and pathway post-career conversation. So whether that training and education needs to be provided, that's where we'd look at granting access to the jobs portal to be able to log on and apply for any roles. And then what also happens is we do keep in touch with you on a regular basis just to check in, see how any employment's going, see if you're looking at any other areas, and then that shifts into referral ready and employment ready, as I was mentioning before. And lastly, so just to keep up to date with us at the Naval Shipbuilding College, you can jump onto our socials, and if you like to follow us on any of those social media channels, that's just those ones through there for you too. But thank you very much for everyone for listening and logging in today, and I'll hand back over to Gio.
All right, apologies everyone for technical issues. Internet connection. I guess there's too many people watching Netflix already at lunchtime. Thank you, James. Thank you, Matt, and thank you, Charlotte, for sharing your insights with us. If I can please ask James and Matt, if you want to switch your video back on and microphone, we'll do a bit of a Q&A. That's a great opportunity for the audience to ask you questions and pick your brain a little bit further. There is one question that I'd like to start with, which aligns with some of the comments that were made in the chat. So how do procurement and supply chain roles fit into the various other roles across the different function within the shipbuilding industry? Matt, perhaps we'll start with you from a practitioner perspective. How does your role interact with other areas of the business?
Yeah, so the supply chain and procurement roles, we interface with most, if not all, functions every day, engaging with a cross variety of stakeholders, be it the engineering team providing data in, getting the inputs for technical documentations, the operations team building the actual ship, answering queries, quality, engaging supplier improvement work, addressing quality concerns. Then we've got the financial team with cost forecasting, which we do, legal and commercial, contractual terms, disputes, claims. So again, I could probably go on, but I feel we are a key integrator role. So but supply chain, operations and engineering, definitely within BAE Systems, are three of the key delivery functions, and we're delivering the parts, engineering, the design, operation, building, and interfacing with the other functions, jointly working together, supporting the three areas to deliver their scope so the actual ship can be delivered and built. And again, the range of activities procurement can get involved in, the initial setting the procurement and acquisition strategy, getting the early design concept of a ship, so that real concept phase, into design, assessment, manufacture, in service. We're literally involved throughout the process, from the inception to disposal, and then every aspect from more indirect services, aspects for supporting running the office and running the ships, to actual smaller components, people on site to facilities, and what my sort of team does, the larger components which actually are put together to assemble the ship.
And thanks, Matt. Is there anything that you guys want to add, James or Charlotte, in terms of the interaction? James, maybe from your perspective.
Sure, thanks, Joe. How does it tie in as well? There is another component, which is the subcontracts that come into place with our small medium enterprise. So, like Matt mentioned, around the different types of roles and how that does relate across into the major primes, there is also other organisations that will come on board as the project starts to progress a bit further down as well. So it comes into materials supply, any type of IP where subcontractors do get involved as well. So there's those types of roles that come into play on various levels there too.
Brilliant, thank you. Jump into a question that Bernadette is asking. Does the procurement talent acquisition program requires a specialised sector-specific background to qualify? Maybe we'll start with you, James.
Sure. So not necessarily specific backgrounds. Any type of transferable skill sets are really beneficial in that recruitment process. So if you are looking at rewriting a resume or anything like that, make sure that they're tailoring the role, tailoring to the role, and the skill sets that you have currently are applicable. We have seen a mixture. So you find if it's within a similar role or skill set, that's where it is very beneficial, but not necessarily a specific background to qualify on that. It is a mixture of different roles that do come through, even that we've seen since the jobs portal has gone live earlier this year. It ranges from administration through to management on the different levels of skill sets that they are looking for across industry.
Charlotte, do you want to add something?
Yeah, if I may just add, I'm in a privileged position where I get to speak to a lot of people who either procurement finds them or they find themselves in procurement and supply. Equally, there's a lot that go, I do want a career in procurement and supply, and they know that from the outset. And some of these people tell me fascinating stories. One told me a fascinating story. I was a professional seamstress, so I was dressmaking, and then all my work got outsourced to China. So I found myself in procurement because I was then involved in managing those suppliers. And I loved the job. And I then continued to build my skill set to become a fully fledged procurement professional. And I do think that's the wonderful thing about our profession, procurement and supply. You draw upon existing skills and you can take those with you, as James has described, and I'm sure Matt's touched upon with his background as well. And then develop others. So if you're a very strongly analytical person, quite mathematically or numbers oriented, absolutely, there's a role for you in procurement and supply. You'll be able to develop the interpersonal skills, the stakeholder engagement, the negotiation and so on, to really complement your existing fairly number oriented background. But equally, if you're a real people person, you maybe you're in HR and you love engaging with people, understanding about them, understanding the requirements, what turns them. There's an absolute role for you in procurement and supply. You'll build on that human, that interpersonal skill set, and you'll complement it with the other technical skills for procurement and supply, and you can have a very successful career. It's such an accessible profession, irrespective of your existing background, and the heartland, the technical procurement and supply skills will do you proud in any sector. You just have to be able to adapt and open your mind to the constraints or the opportunities within your next sector. And we see people constantly flit between sectors, and they learn and bring innovation with them from other sectors. So it's such a rewarding profession. And I know many of you who are listening today will be able to identify and relate to those experiences.
Thanks, Charlotte. Matt, any tip from your end as a practitioner in the job? What would you say?
Yeah, I'd echo a lot of what James and Charlotte said, especially James saying about tailoring your CV, cover letters, etc. Again, there's a whole variety of skill sets. I've had a number of people I've worked with, worked for, or had worked with me with a variety of backgrounds who've been really great procurement and supply chain professionals. Again, it's understanding your strengths and how you can apply it. But when you are tailoring, pull that out for when you're reviewing CVs. I get quite a lot of CVs because we're growing, where some make it really clear how their skills background can help and how it can be applied for the role. Others I see, it makes it really hard to read and pull that out. So pull them soft skills and analytical skills, a whole variety of PM, risk, sales, where you've had interpersonal skills, pull them out and make sure it is clear how they can be applied, because they definitely can. But a tip with reading a lot of CVs, you see ones make it really easy, some of them, and some of them make it hard that you're guessing how it relates to it. So yeah, look at what the advert is and amend it, because there is a variety of soft, technical, analytical skills which you can apply, and I think will make good procurement professionals. Will really pull that out and make it easy to understand that.
Very helpful. Thank you all. There's a very interesting question here, one that's very topical, particularly given the skills shortage that we're seeing across the board in Australia and New Zealand in terms of lack of procurement people. Someone's asking, there seems to be a lot of job advertised. What would your advice be to someone outside of procurement, a non-procurement professional, to pursue a career in procurement and supply chain? Charlotte, maybe we'll start with you.
Yeah, thanks. I'm just wondering if I might do a demo and just share my screen to talk through. So this is kind of like best kept secret time. So if you're thinking about getting into procurement, the best thing you want to do is evaluate your existing skill set. Hopefully you can see my screen. I've just gone to the CIPS website. We provide a tool, free for all. You don't have to be a member. It's the global standard for procurement and supply, and it sets across 11 different areas of competency, the core competencies for a procurement and supply professional, from entry level right the way up to strategic leadership level. So tactical being that entry level, advanced professional being strategic leadership level, and I suspect that's really where Matt's operating. And everything in between. So a really good way is to evaluate what from this pick list of skills have you already got. I'm just going to go into operational, just for the purposes of this. These are the 11 areas of capability set out across those 4 categories. If you're not already familiar with procurement and supply, you might have some of the people development skills already. This tool will allow you to drill down into the different skills. You can actually then see, oh, I'm actually already doing that. Absolutely, the context will be procurement and supply if you're looking for a career in procurement and supply, but that will start to help you understand how your existing skill set could be useful to deploy in a procurement and supply environment. Equally, as you go through, you might start to look at some of the, what I'd say, procurement and supply kind of core skills. So developing contracts is under contracting. At an operational level, these will be the sorts of things. And you might go, well, they sound pretty good. I quite like the sound of that. Maybe I need to develop my skill set, and you'll start to look at how you can close off those gaps. So that tool's free for everybody. If you're a CIPS member, there is a self-assessment included as part of your membership, but ultimately understanding what you've already got and understanding the gaps is a really good starting point to help you be in charge of your own career. And I think to the point that Matt made around tailoring what you've got to meet the context is a really, really good way to really showcase what you've already got and how open you are to continuing your further professional development. As a professional body, we would always advocate for professionals, aspiring professionals, to work towards the professional certification for procurement and supply, which is MCIPS. And we know increasingly employers are looking to those credentials as an indicator of your technical proficiency and your commitment to professionalism. But it's not all things to all people. So very much consider your own circumstances and your skill set as a starting point. And certainly reach out to us, reach out to Naval Shipbuilding College. We can help you with pointers around where you might want to look to consider additional training, certification, or otherwise.
And I'd like to follow up. The MCIPS, or working towards MCIPS, is something which I know for my team and a number of the job adverts for procurement and supply for BE is something we look for. And actually having the graduate diploma in purchasing and supply, which I got through the level 6, actually helped with the visa. So when I was applying to move over to Australia, having the graduate diploma counted towards the groups I needed to apply against procurement manager, and having a recognised body qualification was also one of the key aspects which could prove I actually was skilled in this area and could undertake a procurement role. So something I personally, again, when I did CIPS, I never planned it would be used to emigrate to the other side of the world, but it's something which really helped me with the visa application as well.
Thanks, Matt. And James, you probably see, and you get this question asked very often from people trying to enter your profession. Well, what would be your advice to those looking to have a career?
Yeah, just to echo what Charlotte and Matt said as well, it's one of those concepts where it is that transferable skill set, and the beauty of supply chain and procurement, it does come across, whereas you've got more, I guess, the traditional roles like engineering, when they've got specific expectations around what's required. But from what I've seen from the candidates that have gone through into employment from within the workforce register, from that procurement supply chain background, it is just similar roles, similar skill sets, being able to sell that and work across. There is no real restrictions, I would say, to have naval shipbuilding experience to start with, but it's that developable skill set essentially. So like I said before, selling, just make sure you're highlighting the correct aspects, and that's really beneficial too.
Brilliant. Thank you all. If I can ask you maybe to leave us with a 30-second statement on your top tip on a successful career in procurement, specifically from your end, James and Matt, in procurement and shipbuilding. What would that top tip be? 30 seconds each.
For me, be flexible. Take the opportunities when they come about. Take the opportunities to learn and develop yourself, and actually think about your career and your development plan, because if you don't do it, no one else will. So take that onus yourself, and sometimes jump into the unknown a little bit and take them steps to develop yourself professionally and personally.
Thanks, Matt. James, your top tip.
Yeah, on the spot, Gio, I would say look outside of the box. So I myself have actually got a business background as well, and also procurement and supply. With that, I always found that I was looking in a particular area, and that doesn't necessarily always work that way. So if you're looking outside the box to see where else you can, I guess, find the different roles, find the different types of meanings, because some industries have different components or different aspects that still relate to this skill set. So that would be my recommendation there. That's where you kind of go, okay, well, what can I bring in as opposed to what you're looking for, I think.
Thank you, James. Charlotte, your top advice.
Probably similar to what Matt and James have both said, but don't be afraid to be your best self and make time to prioritize your personal and your professional growth and development so that you can really be your best self. We are all individuals, and that is the value that you bring to the organization. It's not about replicating to be the same as everybody else. It's about being an individual and bringing that flair and talent. So do make the time to invest in yourself.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. It's been a very interesting discussion. I've learned quite a great deal. There's some really interesting aspects that you've shared, and I guess apply across a number of industry, but particularly in the shipbuilding side. It was quite a new world for me to learn of. So before I leave you, I'd kindly ask everyone to share their feedback through the survey that will pop up after you close Zoom. But before we go, we have another awesome session scheduled for next week. It's a bit of an odd time. It's on the 5th of October at 4:30 Australian Eastern Standard Time. It's women leader fellows from the world. There's 5 amazing women from 4 different continents joining us from the UK, Africa, Middle East, Australia, and New Zealand. And they will be talking about leadership and courage. So very inspirational. Please, if you can, make sure you tune in. You'll receive a link to the webinar in your follow-up email. Hope you've enjoyed the session, and until we see you next time, please keep safe. All the best and enjoy the rest of your day.